Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. The Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that looks at difficult topics in life and business and presents them in a fun and lighthearted way. We always have a chuckle, and today is actually a very unique episode. So our Danette, Director of Learning, sat down with Leah Mether, who is a communication specialist and author who really works in the people space and building people skills. So this conversation is just a one-on-one. We thought we'd do something a little different this week. And if you enjoy this one-on-one conversation with Danette, Danette's got her own podcast called the Adapt with Danette FM podcast, where she looks at adaptability, something she specializes in. But otherwise, enjoy this episode. Hopefully we'll see Leah on that podcast as well soon. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. And today it's just Leah Mether and myself that are going to be having a conversation. I was really interested in Leah's topic, so I wanted to have an early conversation, and then we're going to bring Leah back to have a team conversation as well. But I just thought we'd allow everyone to have a bit of a sneak peek about what Leah writes about and what she talks about. So, Leah, how's your week been? And yeah, let's start there.
My week has been great. It's always a bit of a mixed bag with the sort of work that I do, which is one of the things I actually really love about working as a trainer, speaker, mentor, is the diversity of clients, of people, yet usually with very similar issues across all industries. So it's good fun.
I love that, Leah. So, Leah, did you want to introduce yourself to both our audience and our viewers?
Absolutely. So clearly, hello, everybody. My name is Leah Mether. Essentially, I'm a communication specialist. So I work as a speaker, a trainer, and what I am obsessed with is helping make the people part of leadership and work life easier. And let's face it, the people bit is almost always the trickiest bit, regardless of what industry role you have. And I do that by teaching what have traditionally been dubbed the soft skills, which are anything but soft. They are the hard part. And that's why, for those watching, the first book I've got on my shelf there, my first book that I wrote, is actually called Soft is the New Hard, which is all about the importance of these essential human skills. Soft is a misnomer, and how we really need to up them if we want to be successful in our careers.
Love that, Leah. And we're totally on the same page, because we spend a lot of time just talking about how important it is, because if we have the technical skills but we don't have the people skills, it just makes it so much harder, just like your book said.
Yeah, and look, it's only going to get worse, because as AI and technology continues to advance and take a lot of jobs, let's face it, it's not our technical skills that are going to future-proof our careers. It's actually our human skills. They are what set us apart from the robots. So even if you're in a role like an engineering position or something that is highly technical, actually the skills you're going to need going forward are these people skills, whether it's your emotional intelligence and self-leadership in terms of how you manage you, or whether it is things like communication, leadership, collaboration to help you work with other people. So, these aren't just the soft, fluffy extra, it's actually the skills of the future.
Love it, Leah. So let's start with my first question, because I loved your topic. And my first question was, what are some ways to disagree with respect without attacking others? Because people often don't want to have difficult conversations because they're worried about this. So I really love your take on this.
Yeah, look, I think we're seeing two extremes at the moment. We see an increasing polarization in our world. So a lot of people have forgotten how to disagree with respect or to debate ideas without attacking people. And obviously social media is rife for this. You see lots of people yelling at each other. So people seem to go either extreme. They're either yelling at each other and attacking rather than debating ideas, or exactly as you said, they're going, I don't know how to do this in a way that's not conflict or confrontational, so I'll say nothing, which of course often makes the problem worse. Those people who are our avoiders and think it'll magically get better on its own. It doesn't happen. The problem just gets worse. So in terms of how we can do it, there's so much I could cover here, but some of the really practical tips, first and foremost, it is around the importance of regulating your own emotions. It's cliched because it's true. Like, just pause, take a deep breath. If you're on your email, just step away from the desk for a moment, folks. Just give yourself some time. And then a little phrase that has been a godsend for me that I encourage listeners and viewers to consider is get curious, not furious. So start from a position of curiosity, even if someone has posted or said something that you totally disagree with, and it makes your blood boil and you want to just say something straight back. Take that deep breath and then ask a question. So, Danette, if you said something that I thought, that's ridiculous, instead of me just saying that's ridiculous and starting a conflict, I might take that breath and say, wow, Danette, that's really different to how I see things. Can you help me understand where you're coming from there, or how you came to that position? Can I get some more context there? And what that does is it allows me to pause and regulate myself a bit more, but it also allows you to give me some context. And that's really important, because I might have been about to go get on my high horse and go on a big rant against you and what you said. But you might say, well, actually, Leah, I came to that position because in the country that I grew up in, or in the situation I grew up in, here was my lived experience, and that's how I came to my position. And because I've asked a question, I haven't jumped down your throat and made a whole heap of assumptions. So I get the context. Now, even if I still totally disagree with you and I still think you're being ridiculous, because I've paused and asked a question, I can then respond with, well, look, Danette, I appreciate that that's your perspective or your experience. However, for these reasons, here's where I'm coming from. And because I have taken the time to ask a question of you, you're more likely to listen to what I say, because I have modeled that curiosity in the first instance. When we've done that, again, there's so much I could say here, but I'll just give you another few. It's really important to ask yourself whether you need to engage. And, there's no right or wrong answer here, but you do need to ask yourself the question. Sometimes, let's use social media as an example. Sometimes you go, well, I'm not going to engage because I know that person won't change their mind. And that's valid. It might be why you don't engage. But trying to change someone's mind isn't the only reason to comment. It might be that they've said something so offensive that I just need to counter that so that other people viewing it know that there are other opinions. It might be that it's against my values, and it's not that you have to change your mind, but it's for me to be okay. I actually need to put an alternate perspective. So on that, it's asking whether you need to engage and then being really clear on the outcome that you want. So this is what helps me not attack you. If I go, Danette's probably not going to change her mind here, but that's actually irrelevant. If maybe someone has, I don't know, made a homophobic claim or something like that, it might be me saying, I don't want people in the LGBTQIA plus community to see that and think that that's okay. So even if I get slammed for it, I'm going to comment respectfully, but I'm going to say, look, I don't agree with that, so other people see that. So that's important too. From there, it is really crucial to explain your intention. So I might say, hey, the reason I'm raising this, Danette, I'm not trying to start a conflict here. I wanted to share another perspective, because I think for us to get the best decision, we look at this from all angles. And what that allows is for you to then go, oh, okay, she's not trying to have a crack at me here. She's well-intentioned. I'm going to drop the defenses. And then the last one I'll give you for now, and again, there's a lot more I could say, but is the importance of I statements. Now,
Yes.
listeners have probably heard this a million times before, but the reason we keep banging on about it is because it's really important. If I say to you, Danette, you're wrong, what are
Yes.
you likely to say back to me?
To be very reactive and not listen at all.
Exactly. Suddenly it's like, no, I'm not, you're wrong. And we
Yep.
are in an escalated situation very quickly. Whereas if I say to you, look, Danette, I appreciate that's your perspective, but I disagree. What are you more likely to say to me now?
Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more or why.
Yes.
And we might still have a robust disagreement. And there's actually nothing wrong with that, folks. Being
Yes.
able to disagree is important for getting great decisions and the best outcomes.
Yes.
But it then becomes a productive conversation where we're playing the ball, not the person. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. We're not attacking each other as humans. We're trying to debate an idea or an issue. And that's what we're trying to come back to.
I love your answer, Leah. And a couple of things come to mind. So your languaging is beautiful language. It works with the brain rather than triggering threats. And I would say on the other side of good conflict is actually better relationships, better understanding. So
absolutely.
we're totally on the same page around this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's reminding each other of the common ground
Yes.
as well. Like
Yeah.
we might have really different opinions on how to approach a situation. Maybe we're in a workplace where from different parts of the business, you know, you might be people focused, I might be money focused, and
Yes.
it seems like we're just going to be at odds. But if we can put the common ground in the center of the table and say, you know what, I appreciate we're coming from different perspectives here, but I think we can both agree that ultimately we're trying to get the best outcome for the company.
Yes.
And we might have a different approach to that, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we've both got good intentions here of wanting to help our company be successful. And when you remind each other of the common ground, again, you can then debate the ideas and come at it from different angles. But instead of it being an attack, it's a problem-solving conversation and with a solution focus instead.
Yep, love that. Love that. And you know, if our listeners take nothing away other than just learning to sit in that space and have better conversations, this podcast has already been awesome.
Yeah,
so,
good.
And we've only done question one. So we come to the next question, and this really sort of will be good for people to raise their awareness about what stops people from doing this.
Look, there's a few different things. I think, you know, if we go back to where we started, where we said, you know, we often see extremes.
Yes.
People who go straight to the attack and the aggression, a lot of the time, that's just a really dysregulated response.
Yes.
It's people are not having that moment. And, you know, there's that beautiful work around the difference between reacting and responding.
Yes.
That if you can take that moment, take the breath, you know, in the words of Viktor Frankl, we, you know, between stimulus and response, there's that space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I think for a lot of people, they're not even aware that they have the ability to choose their response. They just get that instinctive emotional reaction and they just act right there. And then it's like, pick up the pieces afterwards. You know, I've fired off that email, I've said that first thing. And for anyone listening who says, yeah, but I can't control that, you actually can.
Yes.
But you have to learn how to do that. You can't control the emotion because the emotion's instinctive, but you can regulate how you express that emotion. But that doesn't magically happen either. That takes a lot of practice.
Yes.
You don't get good at what you don't do is one of my favorite sayings. You don't, you know, listen to this podcast, brilliant, but you're not going to listen to this podcast and suddenly be able to regulate your emotions. Like,
totally
I'm
true.
sorry, folks, it takes hard work.
Yes.
So I think there's that piece. On the other side, I think there are people who, you know, there's some people who just don't have the skill. They've never been, and it's one of the reasons I'm passionate about the work that I do. A lot of people have never been taught how to have a challenging conversation with respect. So they would like to speak up, but they don't know how. So those people often fall into really unproductive passive-aggressive behavior where I want to let you know that I'm angry, but I don't know how. So I'll give you the silent treatment instead, or I'll stomp around the office or the house and hope you pick up the fact that I'm really upset without me having to say it. Not helpful, folks. I also think there's a lot of people who, you know, in my workshops, I often say, put your hand up if you love conflict. And I don't have people put their hands up. You know, a lot of people, either through, for some people, it's through the way they were raised. Like if you were raised in a house that wasn't safe, where it wasn't safe to speak up, conflict, you know, turn violent or something like that. Well, of course, you're not going to speak up. So, you know, for some people it's people pleasing, for some people it's that real fear. There can be so much that underpins why people don't do this work. And I think that's why, you know, such a foundational piece of most of the work I do is around self-awareness. So if you're listening to this and you're not great at debating ideas with respect or speaking up and being assertive, it's doing some unpacking on what's going on there for you, because there is not a one size fits all answer.
Love that. And, you know, that whole, we know the stats around self-awareness are that most people think they're self-aware, but about 10 to 15% of the population actually are. So it's likely to be most of our viewers and listeners that we need a little bit of work in this area. So I love your answer, Leah, around it is individualistic because each person's going to be different, and it is something that people can learn. So there is hope for everyone that thinks they can't do it. It's just
a
something
skill
to learn.
This is all of this. They are all skills. They can be learned, improved, and developed. And anyone listening, you know, what's a sign that you do lack self-awareness? If you're listening to this going, I don't need to work on this. Sorry, folks. If that's you going, I did a leadership course once, or I've done communication training, tick. That's not how this stuff works. None of us get it right all the time. No one is a perfect communicator. Everyone can improve. I mean, I teach this stuff for a living. I've written 2 books on it. I stuff it all the time because I'm human too. I always have to be looking at what I can do to improve. So, yeah, you're right. We need to unpack what's going on. And it's okay if you don't know, you know, exactly what's going on for you, but maybe get some support to unpack that, because you won't. Here's the thing that I absolutely do know is true. If you don't know what is holding you back, you won't know which tools to use to help you speak up. Because I can teach you lots of tips and tricks for having challenging conversations, but if you don't know what the blocker is for you, even knowing all the tips and tricks, you won't be able to do it.
And what I love about this conversation, Leah, is these are skills that no matter where you are in an organisation, but particularly at leadership level, they're going to be your blind spots if you don't work on them. And you wonder why you're not having the impact you want. And, you know, I do a lot of communication training too, and I will ask people, you know, hands up who's actually sort of actively worked on this. And most people are like, I communicate every day, I'll get better. And it's like, no, we need to actually be really intentional. So love your message. So let's then talk about, why is it important for leaders to be clearer about their expectations?
I love this question. I love this question because so often I get a phone call from leaders who say, oh, I've got this tricky person in my team, or can you give me some coaching on how to have a difficult conversation with this person because their behavior or their performance is not up to scratch, and I need to address that. The first question I ask is, you know, I'll say, yeah, absolutely, I can support you with that. But let me ask a question first. Do they know what good performance or behavior looks like? And they'll go, oh, well, yeah, it's common sense. To which my response is, common sense is not common. Not everyone thinks like you. So you can't hold someone accountable for poor performance or poor behavior if you have not set the expectations about what good looks like.
Yeah.
We have to set our people up for success. And this is probably one of the biggest failures, things that they don't do within teams that I come across in my work. Leaders who haven't done the work within a team at a whole scale level to go, what do we want the experience of working in this team to be like? How do we want to treat each other? What does that look like in practice? What does good performance look like? What are the expectations around responsiveness or any of that stuff? And it done well, it doesn't just come from the leader from up on high. These are actually conversations with a team that if you engage your team and they are part of coming up with these shared expectations, it gives you an incredible lever to pull as a leader around accountability. But you can't do it if you don't have the clear expectations. Now, this even goes down to a task base. If I was asking you to do a task for me, I need to make sure I'm explaining what done well looks like to me. Because if I say to you, Danette, can you get me a summary report on that project, please? If that's all I give you, if you're a perfectionist, you're probably walking away going, all right, clear the decks for the next 2 weeks. I've got to get Leah a 50-page report. Everything else is going to wait. And it may be that can you get me a summary report? I meant, can you get me 5 dot points in an email by the end of the day?
Big
but
difference.
I haven't communicated any of that. So expectation-wise, it takes a little bit of extra effort up front, but the time it saves, for those leaders who say to me, I don't have time for this, my response is, you don't have time not to do this, because that little bit of extra information around giving you those expectations, clear expectations, puts you in a position where you can go away and you're more likely to deliver what I want. So it just makes so much sense. And if you're listening and you think to yourself, yeah, but my boss is rubbish at doing this, well, you can actually model it to your boss. So what that might look like, instead of it looking like you're asking 20 questions, it might be if you said to me, Leah, can you get me a summary report? I can say, yes, Danette, absolutely, I can do that for you. Now, to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations here, can I ask a couple of questions? So when you say summary report, what are you after? Are you talking, a few dot points in an email, couple of pages? And I can ask those questions. And because I've framed it as to make sure I'm delivering what you're after, you don't see it as, oh, Leah, you're so annoying asking questions. You see it as, Leah, you're awesome because you're trying to make sure that you deliver what I need here. So again, they're such small and simple conversations, but so many of us jump over them. And then we're dealing with the fallout of people not meeting our expectations. So it is so important that we put the time in so that we can hold people accountable, but also so that they have a chance of being successful.
And I love that last example you did about asking me the questions is a great example of managing upwards. So a lot of people, when they think of managing upwards, think, I'm just going to give this task to the boss. But actually, it's like, let's understand each other so we're working together. And I know some leaders, particularly when they start out, get a bit triggered by employees who ask questions. And I love your take on this, and this wasn't one of the questions, but I love your take about if I'm the boss or the leader and I'm getting triggered by an employee, what work might I need to do to make sure that I'm actually being a good leader rather than letting those emotions trigger me and not being a great leader?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes back to that. You got to get curious, right? So it's that, what mindset do I have as a leader? Is it curious or closed? Because a closed-minded leader is going to want to be right.
Yes.
An
Nice.
open-minded, curious leader is going to want to get it right or get
Yes.
the best outcome. So it allows you to, kind of park your ego a bit. So if you are, getting defensive, again, it's that asking yourself, what's this actually about? What's
Nice.
going on here?
Yes.
And it might be if you're getting triggered by your people asking clarifying questions, the obvious thing that stands out for me there is maybe get better at giving instructions. Maybe make sure that you're putting your expectations in there, not in a micromanaging way, but making sure that I'm giving you, I need it by the end of the day, don't need war and peace, some dot points in an email would be great. And then asking you, so based on what I've told, whatever you do, folks, if you're listening, don't say, do you understand?
Oh, yeah.
And don't say any questions. Because if you're the boss, of course, people are going to smile and nod and say, yeah, I've got it. Because they want to impress you.
Yes.
So to clarify there, it might be I give my instruction and I say to you now, based on what I've just explained, how do you plan to tackle this? And then you can repeat back. That's going to be where I find out if things have come all right. But yeah, I think that question to ask yourself, if you're getting triggered by people asking questions, I speak a lot about the difference between leadership and management. And if you're getting triggered by that, you're probably more in the management space. Yes. Where it's about hierarchy and it's about power and I want to get it right and I'm task focused. Yes. If I'm in the leadership space, I recognize that people drive performance. So the way for me to be successful as a leader is for my people to be doing their best work. So I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I am hiring great people to do great work and I need to get the best out of them. So there's all these questions that I would be asking myself if that was and don't beat yourself up if it is your response.
Yes.
Like we've all been there, right? Where
totally.
We all have our self-doubt and, you're probably sitting in that leadership position going, oh my goodness, do I know what I'm doing? And I've got to make a good impression. And, this is again, what the people bit's really hard.
Yes.
Hard work, but get curious about it. What's going on for you?
Love that answer, Leah. And it's so true because, when we do a process, there's usually a right and a wrong way because everyone's so different. It's like, okay, what will work for this person? And it could be completely different from the next person. And that's okay. So as leaders, getting okay with that discomfort of I don't know all the answers and working with your people is great. I love that. So my next question is, particularly around accountability, why do people have difficulty with accountability?
Look, again, so many answers we could have there. In terms of leaders holding people to account, why do they have trouble doing it? And then we can look at it from an employee side. I think, a lot of the time the reason leaders struggle with holding people to account, it goes back to they haven't set up the expectation. So they're coming from a dead start. They'll go, oh, I've got to hold someone accountable, but they're not having regular one-on-ones. They're not having regular feedback conversations. They haven't set shared expectations. All of this is foundational work that if you are doing these things, like feedback should not be something you save up for performance review.
Yes.
No one should ever find out they're not performing for the first time in a performance review.
Totally agree.
Yet it happens all the time.
Yes.
Still. But if you're having regular feedback, checking conversations, you're setting expectations really well, accountability actually becomes quite easy.
Yes.
Because you're doing it all the time. It's not this big, oh my goodness, I've got to have a hard conversation with that person. So I do think that is why a lot of leaders struggle. There are still a lot that even in leadership, we want to be people pleasers and we want everyone to please like me. And if I hold you accountable, maybe, you won't. So I think that's what can be going on for a leader from an employee perspective. Look, I think we're in a really interesting time at the moment, post-COVID. There's a lot of research coming out, a lot of anecdotal evidence that I'm seeing too around people's feelings about work are changing for people of probably my generation, early 40s and above, who were raised that you work hard and you do all of these things. You know, I work with a lot of people who kind of go, yeah, that's the good old days, and this new generation don't have a work ethic. And I think that's actually rubbish. I think,
me too.
you know, it is rubbish. And my challenge back to that is the way we do it so healthy, like where work is everything, like that's actually not great either. So I think there's part of that we can be challenged in. Just because someone's approach is different to ours doesn't make it wrong. So
Correct.
part of that from a leader and an employee perspective has to be going, is this actually fair accountability? Like, is this, you know, is this part of my job, or is it just that they operate differently to me, and different doesn't mean wrong?
Yes.
I do, though, think on the flip side of that, there are some employees out there who maybe, you know, you can unpack this a long way, right? There's probably goes back to some parenting stuff. I come across a lot of people that I work with who have gone into the workplace and they've never received feedback. They've always been told they're great and everyone gets a participation award, and, you know, they get their first bit of maybe constructive feedback and it becomes, you're bullying me.
Yes.
You're, you know, and bullying's a really serious thing, but it's not feedback.
Yes.
So I think, again, there's a disconnect and I think a lack of understanding sometimes about what actually accountability is and what it isn't. Because if you are getting a wage or you're being paid to do a job, the expectation is that you do a job. Yes, hopefully you've got a leader who sees you as a full human and they have the empathy piece as well. But part of their role is to hold you accountable. So again, I think so much of the answer to that lies in that foundation, though, that, you know, if you're not doing regular check-ins, if you're not providing feedback, and feedback, this is not just make it negative feedback.
Yes.
This is, you know, if you want to get some trust built, make sure if someone does a great piece of work, you need to tell them and not just say good job. It needs to be, hey, that summary report I asked you to do, the way that you made that so concise and really did summarize the whole project in those 10 dot points, that's actually exactly what I was after. You know, if I ask for a summary report again, please deliver it like that.
Nice.
So, you know, one, you then go, okay, that's what I've got to do next time so I can repeat it. But also you then see me as a leader who's fair.
Yes.
Who, when you do good work, I will acknowledge it and I will call it. And if I'm someone, it's got to be genuine. It's not about, you know, blowing smoke. But if I'm a leader who does that, now then if I do have to have a conversation about, actually, Danette, that piece of work wasn't quite up to your usual standard, you're still not going to like it, but you're going to be more open to hearing it if you see me as that leader who calls it both ways. If the only time I ever give you feedback is to tell you something wasn't good enough, you are going to start getting put out going, you just don't like me.
Yes. Good point there, Leah. I love that. So we've had a great conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners and the viewers around what we've been chatting about?
Yeah, I think where I often start with this, whether it's talking about leadership, communication, leading through change, one of the most important reflections we can do is start by asking ourselves, what do you want to be known for?
Nice.
What do you want to be known for as a leader? Or it might be if you're navigating a tough period at work or even in your personal life. As I navigate this, what do I want to be known for? What's my North Star? Because if you are not really clear on that, it's easy to end up behaving in a way that's really off course and you don't even realize it. You don't recognize the person you've become. Whereas if you're really clear on the sort of person you want to be, the sort of leader you want to be, it becomes a touchstone that you can keep checking against. Like, was that behavior in line with that sort of leader. And you won't always get it right, and that's okay. But if you know what you're aiming for, you've got something to come back to.
And I love that intentionality, because when we set those intentions, as you said, it's a North Star to go, okay, maybe I didn't get it right this time. Why was that? Reflect on that and then improve for next. I love that. So, Leah, I'm sure that some of our listeners and also our viewers would love to reach out. So where could they find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to just plug my name, Leah Mether, into Google. My website will come up, which is leahmether.com.au. There's a YouTube channel. I have a weekly segment called Ask Leah, where people send me their tricky people problems and I answer them. So there's hundreds of videos on there. I'm in lots of media and all over the place. So there's heaps of free resources. Even if I never work with you, get into my stuff, because I love making a difference, and this stuff is hard.
It is hard. I love that. And I love you're very similar in terms of we create lots of things, give lots of stuff away. And if people come to us, great. If they don't, that's okay too, because we've served. Okay.
Absolutely.
I love that. And we'll make sure that in the podcast description, those links are there too, so people can contact you.
Beautiful.
Leah, can I say what a great conversation, and we will get you back to have a full panel with the Magical Learning team as well, because I've loved this bit, and I just wanted to make sure we got you early because we've got a bit of a backup with our normal group on our podcast. So I'm glad we got to have a conversation date. Can I say thank you so much? And I'm a bit of a hugger, so you get a virtual hug from me.
Oh, I am too. So I received and given back.
I love it.